Welcome everybody. It's so good to see you again. We're here for Art Conversations again, and we're glad you're with us. And today we have the wonderful Adele Richards. Adele, thanks so much for being here with us. It's such a treat to have you on board.
My pleasure.
So Adele, we're loving having these conversations with folk about their art and creativity and all different forms of art, different forms of creativity. And you are a writer, among many other things. But why don't you just introduce yourself a bit and tell the folks that are listening or watching who you are and what you do.
Oh, how long have you got? Yes, thank you. I'm really looking forward to watching the other ones. My name's Adele and I wear many hats. And one of those hats is I love writing, and I'm going to read something to you that I wrote recently, a few weeks ago. My true love, I would say, is fiction. I have been writing a fiction book for a number of years, the same book over and over again. And that's probably my true love, but I do love words in all shapes and sizes. And once upon a time I used to have my own copywriting company and was a freelance copywriter with a W, not an R, because sometimes people thought that I patented inventions, but I didn't.
That would be a cool job too.
I know, it was like, wow, that would be a really cool job. But I was writing advertising and websites and writing a lot of descriptions about sofas. If you need a sofa described, I'm your woman.
Wow.
And
Just sofas or other forms of
soft furnishings.
Beds, soft furnishings. Yeah. And then we started the church with Beth and Louis, Dave, my husband, and I. And so gradually the copywriting work sort of went down and the church stuff went up.
Yeah.
And then I decided that really my writing energy had to go into this fiction book, which is my great love.
Yes, it's
amazing. And then we do other stuff at the same time.
So good. And me and Beth have had the privilege of reading some of the book in its developmental stages. And
I think I've read 2 drafts.
And we love it and can't wait for it to be finally released someday.
It will be worth it.
Amen.
But yeah, like you said, you've written some poetry, or I don't know if it's like a practice you do a lot of, but you have written quite a bit lately. And you're going to share one of your pieces with us today. We've asked you to do that, and because I love it and it's amazing, and so we're so grateful. So go ahead, fire away. Let's have
fire away. Okay, cool. It takes about 6 minutes to read. I timed it once, so feel free to get comfortable. Okay, this is called To the Unknown God. Don't give me measurables. Don't give me statistics. My soul is thirsty for mystery, for Bible black skies encrusted with stars, falling like reams of fabric into my soul. Take me to the inky darkness, the still before the storm, the quiet cradle of blackness before colour stole into the world. Take me into your inky womb where all is dark and silent save the throb and swell of sea. Take me to the place so dark, so pitch I can but feel my fingertips run across the braille of you. Eyes tight shut, ears unhearing. Greedily I read, comprehending nothing, drinking it all in, bypassing brain and logic and the dry sandpaper of my mind. Let me drink you in, black as a squid's pen. Keep me from the glare of certainty, the prosaic preaching of the gospel of what I know, I can touch and see. Plant me there like a seed in the depth of your mystery. Uncoil me, unfurl me to the richness of you. Unknowable, unsearchable, invisible. God beyond time and space and sea and land, God of mists and clouds and dark thunderings, God of rumbles and groans, God of ice crack and wind blow, God of barren wastelands, of tundra, of solitude and silence, God of the deep inky depths where creatures lurk unseen by human eye, God of the unknowable, forgive me for being all-knowing, all-wise, all-seeing, all-hearing, for reducing you to a skipping rope I can put in the hand of a little girl and shout, jump. Backdoor God, birthing God, hidden around the corner God, where is the place we meet? Not in harsh day's glare or stained-glassed sea or bright and luminous prose or flat on a screen. Where can I go to meet you? My soul is thirsty for your rest. Rest from the senseless chatter of knowledge, my God in a box. God of the oxygen-less galaxies, God of the unobtainable moon, God of the inhospitable planet, God above gravity, God above air, God above sunshine, God above words, God above language. Our towers and tongues cannot touch you. I reach out a hand in the dark and run my fingers along your braille. In the dark, when I cannot see by glare of daylight or klaxon of knowledge. I hunger, I thirst, I needs drink you. My soul is thirsty for the poetry only you offer. Lift the inkwell to my lips and let me drink deep draughts of your strangeness. Don't tell me 3 things I need to know about my God. Cover me in your billions, your ancient starlit songs scattered in the night skies, for distant journeys only angels undertook. Tell me mysteries, fill me with wonder, for I have drunk of the world's well, and it has turned me dry as bone. Show me treasures too great to lift, too sharp to touch, too brilliant to see, and then I, with John, will fall prostrate before you and say, seal it up, for no man can bear the beauty of the resurrected God. He, conceived in darkness, growing in the red dark womb of a woman, speechless, and yet the word. Take me to the storehouses of the wind and rain. Take me to the place the thunder is born, like a calf slipping from its mother, landing on unsteady feet. Show me the lightning fields where seeds of light grow. Show me the ancient hailstones fashioned by a master craftsman, ready for dispatch from the storehouse in their thousands. Show me wonders beyond the universe, beyond the fabric of molecule and atom. Take me where fabric and spirit and mystery spring up like grass in summer. Take me to the place where nothing is familiar and I have no bearings and no words. Take me where I cannot go and man cannot step. Take me to the place of God. Press the fingerprint of your greatness into my clay, that I may fall down and worship and never be bored by my God again. What about the sin of making God boring? What about the iniquity of making him dull? What about the stultifying prose that fashions him in our likeness? What about the primary color palette we paint him in? Look how we limit glory. Look how we minimize God. Who is repenting of these sins, taking beauty and rendering it mundane? Overlooking his jewel-like flames and his cannons of praise and his befeathered magnificence to render him pretty and small and cute. Who is denouncing the profanity of making God boring, of limiting him to a song? Who is painting in 3 colors? The one who can't fit into a frame. Tear up your day-glow fabrics, rend your stupid thoughts. Don't cut God into slices and fit him in your pizza box. He doesn't come delivered on the back of some guy's bike. Stop reducing glory to a full stop or a comma. Drink in the curtain of the night sky. Let reams fall into your soul. Sing with the gunfire of birdsong. Cry out like a rock. Turn yourself into an inkwell and pour out upon the floor. If God is a story, he's written in lava and blood. Don't put him in a paragraph and go off and have your lunch. Weep and wail, stare silent at the moon. Bury your face in the fruitcake fragrant earth. crash cymbals and scream and shout. The worship of this God can't be zipped and buttoned up, swept under a tidy rug. It's a body under the carpet. It's an explosion in the barn. It's a force disruptive, like dynamite in the brain. Sweep, sweep the sky with the largest broom you can find and gather scattered light into your apron. Twirl it around and let it fly. This is how to worship God.
So good.
It's like that deserves a moment.
Stay la.
Yeah, exactly.
That is just so unbelievably profound and so full of imagery, and it just speaks to the frustrations and the language of your heart. You just connect so easily with that. And feel challenged at the same time as feeling hugged, and it's so brilliant. I'd love to hear, how did it come about? How did you obviously have a gift with words, but how did you get that onto the page? Like, what was the sort of story running up to that? Where was the inspiration?
Yeah, the process was interesting for this one, because I have written some poetry in the past, but it's been more from one idea or a concept, and then I've worked on it and polished it, whereas this one is much more raw, and as you could probably hear, there's quite a lot of repetition in there. And normally I would go back and tidy that up. There's a lot of stuff about black ink, there's a lot about this. I even repeated the same imagery, but it came spontaneously and just poured out of me, which is why I didn't want to fiddle about with it and make it pretty. It seemed counterintuitive to try and polish something that was supposed to be raw and provocative. And what happened was that I'd actually hurt my back during lockdown. Too much sitting on Zoom like this, and too much sitting in the same position, tapping away, writing. And I really hurt my back, and so I couldn't sit, couldn't walk. I just had to lie down or stand up. And so I ended up spending quite a lot of time just on my back. And I wasn't even really praying or reading the Bible. It's quite hard to do when you're at that angle. But what I found was that I was just spending a lot of time just resting, aware of the fact that God was with me, and just kind of drinking in his presence. And I wasn't trying to achieve anything or do anything. I was just being. That's all I could do at the time. And that went on for a number of days, just hours here and there like that. And then one day I was there, and all of these words just started flooding me, and I just went to grab my journal, and I was like just writing down what was coming out.
Wow.
And then I put my journal down, like, that's enough, and then it would just still be coming. I was like, oh, hang on, there's another bit, and it went on and on. It's quite long. It just kept coming and coming, and it was like I wasn't looking for it, but I almost couldn't. It was like somebody had turned the tap on, and I couldn't turn the tap off. It was just, these words were gushing, and I have an image in there about being like a dry inkwell, or an inkwell that's filled with ink, and it felt like through that experience of actually just resting for a while and just being in God's presence, that I hadn't realised I'd become like a dry inkwell. It's just nothing really in there. But through that process of rest, I felt like I got full up with words again, and I reached a certain point, and then they just started spilling out, and it was just like my soul or my spirit, I guess, expressing that hunger and that thirst for that place of mystery. So it's almost exactly as I wrote it on that afternoon in different spaces. There's a few sections I cut out because they were, I was stumbling to try and express something which another stanza got a bit better. But on the whole, it was just as it was. So that sort of raw gush of, I must have this encounter with the mysterious God, not this tidy religious experience that we so naturally drift to. So that was it was actually really cool.
That's amazing. I mean, that is, you know, we talk about inspiration and stuff, and that must be like an absolute win when that happens, when it's literally just being pulled out of you or coming out, and it's like, I can't even stop it. It's just going to happen.
I know, it's
glorious. But what do you think about that idea of, like, you're a bit of a magpie then, and that's a great analogy. Like, oh, that's a real shiny little bit. I'll have that, and now I'll store that away in my nest, and that'll come out for some useful thing. That kind of, in terms of creativity, in terms of art, to a certain extent, that's what artists do, isn't it? Really, I mean, there's no new thing under the sun. There's no, there's no absolute originality in a sense, other than what you've produced is original, and it does something that no other thing, no other poem, no other work of art would do, because it's completely unique. Yet there is that element of that magpie analogy going on.
Yes, I mean, I think it's probably true to say that we all people who create are just borrowing from each other and trying to put it through the filter of your own personality. And I think there's such a strong emphasis on originality in our culture, but you do have to understand, even Shakespeare, his stories were not original to him.
Right.
The framework of the story, but obviously the way that he told it was completely original to him in terms of the language, which is completely extraordinary. But like you say, there is nothing under the sun. There is a hunger for news story, but in a sense, they say there's only two stories. There's the quest story where someone's going on a journey and they're trying to find something, and I'm desperately trying to remember what the other one is.
I would love to ask about, you talk about darkness quite a lot in the poem, and I kind of think when people think classically of speaking about God, they would talk about light, and they would talk about that side of him. What were you exploring? Was that a deliberate thing, or was that something coming out of you, like a yearning of your heart for the depth of mystery, or because the language is dark but warm or something?
I think that's, I was playing with that a lot, that idea of the darkness and the blackness of ink and night and all the unknowable. And to me, I suppose it's a metaphor for the mystery, isn't it? The unknowable. Trying to get away from the harsh glare of what you can know and touch and describe, and the way that we've sort of mastered how we experience God or talk about God. We think we have, of course we haven't really. But yes, that was interesting to me, that sense of, and I'd had that sort of experience where I felt like God and I were sitting in a dark place together, but it didn't feel depressively dark or oppressive. It felt free. It felt really expansive, like where we could go anywhere. This could be anything. And just that brooding sense of possibility that you have in darkness. I think that was what was engaging me. We're so fixated with what we can see and touch, and I can hold this in my hand, therefore it's real. Whereas so many of the greatest things in life, you can't. How do you hold love? How do you display joy? How do you catch the wind, isn't it? You don't. You can see the effects of it. And so I was just exploring that whole idea of the lesser known ways of thinking about God, and it talks in the Psalms, doesn't it, about him being surrounded in darkness and coming on in the clouds and wrapping himself in darkness and thunder and lightning, and as not the pretty and nativity Jesus that society would talk about more often, but is still legitimate.
Totally. And do you think, like, I don't know who's gonna hear your poem or read your poem. I'm hoping one day you'll write a long book full of your poems and it'll be published and everyone will be a bestseller. But so in terms of who's going to receive it, I think that speaking to the mystery, that engaging the complete otherness of the supernatural realm, of the spiritual realm, is very engaging for people now today that are spiritually seeking. Kind of, what do you hope if someone was just to say that you did publish that poem, or it got published somewhere? What would you hope that someone without a church background or without a religious background would feel when they read that or when they saw that?
I think what I was trying to do is like take that religious box which makes God so small, and that people think when they don't know God, if they don't go to church, it's very easy to conjure up all that sort of school assembly, kind of imagery of and then equate God is like that nice polite sermon I heard once, or God is like this nice twee song that we used to sing. And I think I just want to like shake that religious nonsense and smash it and be like, look out the window. That's what God's like. Like, have you seen the sky? Like, this is the God we're encountering, we want to talk about. Please don't think he's some horrible, small-minded, religious just form, and not trying to throw every form of religion out the window in terms of like there's nothing wrong with liturgy and songs and hymns, but I think it triggers in people's minds this whole thing of like, right, well, when you're in church, you have to be quiet and you have to be well behaved, and you're nice to the vicar, and then you go home and you have your roast lunch, and it triggers all of this sort of well behaved thinking, which to me is not who God is at all. And so I suppose I was just trying to go,
yes, good.
Oh, you did it.
You did it, and because you read that poem out on a Sunday at our church with that, and I think that happened like for the people in the church, like for us, that was the moment where we didn't want to say anything afterwards. We wanted to hang in that place of, wow, God of the darkness. Oh, yeah, I do know that, God, actually. I'm a little bit scared, but it's very real. And I think that people will have that experience, even if they, hopefully, if they're at the church as well. And I think I've had moments, and we've talked about this before, but I've had moments where I've had encounters with God, which are quite unexpected, and where like aspects of God's nature to do with, to be honest, the vastness of God, or the great mystery of God, or in the true sense, the awesomeness of God. And then you have these moments of encounter like that, and you think, golly, I might die. Can we stop this now, please? Sort of moments. And I think that to be able to, I don't have the words to express those encounters, and I haven't had many of them, but what you've done with that poem somehow puts a language and puts a story, or it somehow defines those kind of encounters, which I think is absolutely marvelous. Absolutely marvelous.
I'm so glad it all happened by accident. But the interesting thing I felt, and of course you don't quite know what's going on in somebody else's head, but when I did read it out at our church, and there was quite a strong emotional response, the thing I felt that people were saying was like, it was connecting to that desire in them.
Yeah.
It was like finally somebody just said it.
Okay.
Finally somebody just went out and said, let's stop painting in 3 colours and being polite and just go, I need more.
Yeah.
And to me, that was what I felt like it was connecting with. I didn't feel like I slapped people around the face and they were like, what? It was more like, oh yes, we were pretending not to be bored, but actually we were being good little Christians, and you know, because we love God, and so we go through our forms and we sing our songs and we listen to our sermons, but
yeah, totally. I mean, I think you say I'm glad it was it was an accident, but I don't think it was an accident, because I think about, you know, you have these moments like that where the words come out, but there's been a lot of time putting words in, and there's been a lot of time honing your craft and really playing around with words to articulate emotion and to articulate and to create pictures. You're incredibly good at I want to ask you about this, and whether this is something that you do with words, or if it's you see the thing first but you create a picture with words. I'm thinking now about a bit about your book and some of the descriptions of other realms, because it's a fantasy novel, and I feel like I'm there when I'm reading it. And do you see it and then put words to it? How does that whole process evolve for you?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I see it and sense it, and then I try and put words on it.
Yeah.
So with the fiction in particular, which is more intentional, crafted, I'm trying to capture a sense of wonder. I think with the landscapes and the world building, it's like, I just remember, you know, when I was a child and I would read Narnia or Tolkien, or, you know, the ones we all love, Three Children, and it just, that moment of where it just transports you into a different world, where it's sort of touching on that longing for Eden or that longing for paradise, that you're like, this is wonderful and beyond beautiful and beyond magical, and in the, like, a good sense of the word, and trying to hang words on that. And I think very much trying to think about the physical sensation, like what would it smell like, what would you be experiencing on your skin, what would it feel like to move in that place, as well as what does it look like, which is probably the first thing. But a lot of the time I think the visuals probably developed, but the feeling was there first. Like it's almost like I could sense the place, and then I'm trying to see what it looks like and add on to that. But I think that's one of the things that is like a trick, as it were, sort of a writer's trick, to try and appeal to the senses as you write. So you're thinking about flavors and textures, and so that you get that feeling of actually being in the scene rather than just observing it. That's what you're trying to do anyway.
You do it.
Yeah, I definitely think you've done that, both with the bits of your book that I've written and with the poem that you just read. So you have an ability to do that, and it's really interesting that you say you feel it first. It's like, I have a feeling, and now I'm going to paint a picture, you know, like an artist would, but with words, you know. Yeah.
The image I quite often get with the book, and I have to say I found fiction writing the most challenging type of writing I've ever tried to do. Like I said, I used to make a living from writing non-fiction, and I was a pen for hire. So it was like, you know, write a brochure. Oh, here comes the dog. Hi, Pip.
Hi, Pip.
Hello, doggy.
Write a brochure about, you know, this computer I've got no idea about, and so it was like always like a challenge. It was like a Sudoku puzzle for writers. Like, first I've got to try and understand what this thing is, then I've got to write about it in a way that's interesting. And but I always found that quite fun. I'm just going to shut the door.
Can't bear an open door.
Whee! I can't bear an open door. I really can't. And then writing fiction, goodness, and I read somebody who explained it just so brilliantly, how frustrating it is when you start, because bear in mind, I've been an avid reader since I was knee-high to grasshopper, so I've probably read, I mean, possibly thousands of fiction books, possibly, I'm not quite sure. And so you think you know what good writing sounds like, and you know what kind of stories you like, and you know characters, and you become a bit of a book snob, and you know you pick one up and you go, oh, no, and then you pick another one up and you're like, oh, I could lick its pages, so beautifully written. This person is a genius. So you have this high level of appreciation. You're like a wine connoisseur. You can just like, oh yes, oaky notes and blackberry, and so you feel like you should be really good at writing it because
producing it.
read so much good stuff, and then you start and you're like, the cat sat on the mat. Well, this doesn't feel like Tolkien, you know. It's like, and you have this gap between your level of appreciation and your level of ability, which makes it so painful. Because if you'd never read a book and you didn't have this finely developed sensitivity, you would just think, the cat sat on the mat, I'm a genius, this is the best thing ever written. And so you sort of go through this journey of frustration of like, this isn't right. Like, I know what good writing feels like and sounds like, and this isn't quite there. And that's why it's very tempting to give up and just be like, oh, seriously. But fortunately, there are lots of good writing books out there, and coaches who will tell you, you know, writing is rewriting. Right. It's just painstakingly going over it again and again. And the image I get is actually sculpture. I've never sculpted anything in my life, but you know, there's amazing like marble sculptures, and you're sort of hacking away at this. You've got this big lump of rock of an idea, and you're like, I've got this idea, but it doesn't look like anything. And you try and like get a vague shape, and at first you think, oh great, look, there's sort of like a form there. Yeah. And then you start to work on the details, and you're just chipping away, and then you get to the final point that, you know, you're just doing really very tiny little adjustments to get the features really sharp. But it's like, it's that torture of like, there's an idea in this block of marble and I'm trying to get it out, but it's just taking so much workmanship and time, and oh dear, I've accidentally lopped his arm off. So I like that image. I sort of come back to it quite a lot when I'm on yet another revision.
Yeah, because your book, in a sense, the idea behind it is quite old, isn't it, for you? Like, you started it a long time ago. Yeah,
yeah. And the original idea has progressed. You know, when you think back, I was like, oh, there's this world and it sort of works like this, but how does this work? And what does this do? And how do they interact? And what are the rules? And how do they move? And what do they eat? And who knows what? And all of these like pieces that have to be figured out when you're doing fantasy, because you're creating a new world. I kind of wish that I was passionate about writing real, you know, things that like happen to real people in an actual house, that you don't have to invent everything. But no, that would be way too actually, I don't know how they do that and make it interesting, but yes, so it has progressed. I had some of the germs of the idea, but it's progressed
a long way. And because they, you know, in a sense, you're talking into the two different things. So you've got, like, in a sense, the inspiration of an idea, or the inspiration that came, in a sense, like your poem. It's almost like just pure inspiration. It just fell out of you, and it was like there wasn't a great deal of the craftsmanship, although not not denying all the hard work that's gone leading up to that point. That means you can, you're a vessel in which can produce that thing. You know what I mean? And then on the other hand, you've got this hard work of working on the craftsmanship. And in one of our other conversations, I think it was with Tim, he talked about this relationship between inspiration and then actually having to make the story arcs actually work and join the dots. And you can't, there's this two aspects to it. And I guess my question is to you, it's like, how do you, because it must be lovely when the inspiration comes, but then how do you just keep on the grind and just keep going?
Yes, that's a good question. I think you just really love it.
Yeah.
You love the idea, you love the characters, and if you can force yourself to sit in the chair and actually get on with it, you start to love the process. Although, I mean, even in this last week, I was telling you guys earlier, I was rewriting, and like they've read this book twice, 2 versions. This is the 3rd version, and they would probably say, "It's done, it's fine, just send it off." And I'm like, "No, but it's not done yet." And I got to this crucial chapter, and I just thought, this doesn't work. But why would she say? Why would he do that? And why would they? No. And it's absolutely pivotal chapter that without this chapter, none of the rest of the story makes sense. And so you have a moment of like, oh no, how can this be? And I actually walked away from it feeling really depressed for a few days. I was just like, I can't think how to make this plausible. It's just not working. And then I can't remember, it was this week but recently I went back to it and just thought, I don't know, but I have to keep trudging through it because I can't ignore this chapter. It's everything's hanging in the balance. So I just started from the top again, and I can't even understand it. As I was just pootling about changing a few words, I suddenly thought, oh, hang on, she would say that, wouldn't she? And then he would think that. Oh, and then they would do that, and then it works.
Brilliant.
I had no idea where the answer came from. It was just like,
wow.
1 minute it wasn't there, and then a few days of mulling over, and I think just sometimes your subconscious is working on it without you consciously trying to figure it out. And that's such a great feeling when you're like, no, it's all right, I just need to tweak this bit, take out that stupid sentence, and then suddenly the joy is back, and you're like, yay, this is great, I'm having fun. And then you hit a chapter, you're like, this chapter's all right, it's great, I only need to change this bit. And so it ebbs and flows. Like sometimes it's hard work and you feel like you're such a loser and you might as well give up and go home. And then other days you're like, this is easy, this is the most fun thing in the world, I could do this for hours. So that's great. My experience anyway.
Yeah, I love it.
I think that's good, and it can translate to all types of creativity. I think there is that hard graft days, and there are the days when it feels like it's the easiest thing in the world. So that's really helpful. So good.
The one or two more questions before then. We could go on all day. But
I was going to say, how long have we been talking for? 4 hours.
I know you do, like you said, you read a lot. And you're part of a book club and you read it and you gather and you do all that stuff, and you've talked about Tolkien and Lewis and others who you read as a child, but who really inspires you? And it doesn't have to be writers, like just in terms of art, what inspires you, or who inspires you?
Gosh, that's a good question. I think anybody inspires me who just doggedly keeps going.
Okay.
And I'm really inspired by people who don't care about whether they have an audience or not. But they're just in their room, day and night, working on whatever it is. And I used to have a friend, well, I still have a friend, but years ago, he was like writing like a musical opera, or like a space opera. It was cool. But it would be a glorious day, and we'd all be out, this is before kids, young 20s, yeah, let's go out to the park or sit on the beach or go out for dinner. And he'd stay in his dark little room with his keyboard, writing this magnus opus, this crazy, like, amazing science fiction musical thing that she then got us to act out at the end and recorded it. And I was just always so impressed with him that he would just like keep making that choice just for the sheer love of it, to keep going. And that really inspires me, to see anybody who's really dedicated to keep turning up and putting the time in, because that's the hard part. It's easy to sort of have a moment of inspiration, but to not give up, that's the hard part, I think.
I think that's great. That's a great message. Do you know what I mean? I think 100%. And thanks so much. We appreciate you being here and having a chat with us. It's been awesome. Learned a lot.
You're an inspiration.
See, now I want to get up and walk into your room, so we'll be like, oh, we were next door to each other all the time. But we're not, but that would be a great comedy scene.
That would be fun. I love that.
And so we look forward to when your book is finished and when your anthology of poems is done, and
and all of the process in between, all the little bits and bobs that we're going to get to hear.
I'm looking forward to the part, and I think from reading other writers, with fiction writing in particular, I think you get to a point where you found your voice, you figured out your craft, and actually you can sit and you can write your book in under 10 years. I feel like I'm getting there. I'm just getting to that point where I'm like, yeah, hang on, I think I might be getting the hang of how to do this. So, and I think that's at 10,000 hours. Have you heard the 10,000 hours of practice till you can really do it? And I think that would be wonderful. I think that would be like my idea of being able to fly, is when you can write and you've got enough skill level in you and understanding about how to structure fiction and how to do dialogue, etc., that the ideas can flood out through the established skills.
Oh wow, yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. Maybe it never feels quite like flying, but I feel like there's a shift into that at some point. So.
Oh, so good. And it took Tolkien 10 years to write his first book. So.
I only write a book every 10 years. I've only got 4 books in me, so I better hurry up.
It'll be really good.
They'll be good books, yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
Everyone who's been listening and watching, I think you'll appreciate it. It's been well worthwhile. So Adele, thank you so much. We appreciate you. We love you.
And keep your ear to the ground for Adele Richards' first fantasy novel.
Yes. No, there'll be no one more excited than the people on this screen, let me tell you.
Awesome.
So good.
Peace.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.